Hello and welcome to the Startline podcast with me, Beth Espy. What does it really take to get onto the start line of a road race, certainly here on the Isle of Man? From hitting enter on the entry form to tuning the bikes, finding the funds and fighting the setbacks, we're following riders hoping all to be at MGP in 2026. So in this episode, we meet George Anderson and he reflects on his journey into this world of motorcycle racing. He remembers the first TT race he watched that inspired this whole thing. He knows where he was, he knows who he was watching, and it really highlights the significance of those early experiences in shaping a dream.
I'm from a little town in Worcestershire in the UK. I think career so far has been a bit up and down over the last few years. Started off in 2013. Circuit racing, then sort of had a few years off, picked it back up 2021, and completed the last couple of seasons up until now.
2021, obviously, it was coming after a pretty weird couple of years, wasn't it? So I think everybody was kind of just finding their feet again after the pandemic and lockdowns and whatever. How did you find getting back into it after that little break?
Rusty. I think everyone was a little bit, but no, it was a few track days and whatnot just to get into the swing of things and more get your mind up to speed more than anything else. And then 23 competed local series, East Midlands Racing at Mallory Park. But yeah, no, it was a good season. Not exactly where I wanted to be come the end, but we sort of made up for that a little bit this year.
And I know you've been over to the Isle of Man. I think you said when you were younger, it seemed to be the lads and dads holiday. So coming over, watching the racing. How much of an impression did it make on you at that point?
Oh, a huge impression. It was almost my dad's highlight of the year. No matter where he'd been, the Isle of Man was the sort of golden egg that topped the year off. My brother, being a little bit older than me, was sort of allowed to go on what I later learned was just a jolly boys outing. As soon as I was deemed old enough, we were there, and been ever since.
And is your dad, has he got a racing background?
No, so we actually lost my dad in 22, but racing himself, no, never. Rode bikes and followed friends and helped out and spanned here and there all over. But no, I'm sort of the first one of the family to actually take to the track as such.
And what did he make of you doing that?
I mean, he was fully behind me. He was probably my biggest fan. Not really, people dubbed them a motocross dad. I wouldn't say he was like that. He didn't sort of push me into it or make me do anything. It was all off my own back. But no, he helped out massively.
It's really tough, isn't it? But you mentioned that he did a lot of spannering and you've done that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, so within the same town's a good friend of mine, local lad, Michael Tustin. He's pretty established 600 rider now. He competed at quite a few clubs and went from strength to strength. He then went to the Tri-Options Cup, which ran alongside the British Superbike Series. And I sort of went with him when I had no bike myself. It was the closest I could get to the racing. So yeah, I went and helped him out for a few years before he moved on to a few bigger teams. And yeah, no, it was good.
And what sort of insight do you think it gives you seeing it from that side of the track?
I think it definitely makes you appreciate what goes on behind the scenes. Obviously, having raced myself up until that point, I knew what it took and what preparation and all the background of what goes on that people don't necessarily always see. To be sort of hands-on doing that for someone else was, it was, when it went well, it was rewarding, but when it was bad, it was bad. But no, it was good fun for the most part.
And, we often talk about the stress that the rider is under, but I guess being part of the team, there is so much responsibility on your shoulders at different points.
I think as long as you've got enough self-belief in your own ability, and it was never a case of, did I do this up? Did I not? I sort of pride myself in bike preparation and always putting out a well-turned-out bike, whether I'm riding it or whether back then Mike was riding it. So that was, at times it was tough, last-minute changes and whatnot, but for the most part, it was enjoyable.
And so then do you do most of the bike prep yourself?
Yes, yeah. So bar sort of suspension and internal engine works, everything else is done by myself, yeah. Fortunate enough to have help of some local firms, good friends, and they all help out where they can and chuck a few quid in the tyre pot, so to speak. Yeah, I know financially is one of the hardest bits alongside juggling everyday life and keeping the wheels turning.
So what does everyday life look for you then? Have you got a job that you're doing at the same time?
Yeah, so in 21, again, just after the pandemic, myself and a friend set up an electrical contractors in the next town along in Gloucestershire. And yeah, the day-to-day is the day-to-day running of the business, really. That takes up, obviously, the majority of my time, and then some late nights in the garage to make up for it.
I guess so. If you've sort of got a little bit of autonomy over your work, though, because you need that flexibility, don't you, when you're going off racing and you have to get all the signatures in and do all that side of things. At least, I guess, maybe to a certain extent, you can dictate your own holidays and whatever.
We've got sort of a bit of an unwritten rule, so most of our work's across the educational sector. So now, for example, is half term, one of our busiest times over the summer break, the 6 weeks. That's when, obviously, the best weather, the best time to go racing. It's also our busiest time at work, so we try and play the game as much as we can. But no, my partner, Jack, he's very understanding and he's fully behind me.
That must be factored in then, because obviously MGP comes towards the end of August next year. Have you kind of planned for that happening?
It does, yeah. We've spoke about it again. Fully supportive of me, and he understands it's my dream, and a dream without a plan's just a wish. We've got a plan in place, and yeah, no, fully supported in that sense of work.
So when did this dream first form in your mind then, George?
Probably the first time I saw a bike come past me in the Isle of Man, to be honest. But at that point, I hadn't actually taken to two wheels, taken to a circuit, so it was sort of always seemed unrealistic. And then a few years down the line, started racing, a few good results here and there. Just seemed a little bit more achievable. The more and more I did, the closer and closer it seemed to get. And yeah, here we are now, and got my expression of interest submitted and waiting patiently like everyone else.
And do you remember where you were standing and who you were watching at that point when you first came over and watched those bikes?
Yeah, so it was, don't quote me on the year, the first TT I watched, Adrian Archibald, won on the Taz Suzuki. We were at Crosby pub, usually with my dad. It had to be close to a pub.
Sounds like he had it absolutely right. And yeah, it's just amazing, isn't it, to think what an impression that made on you. And I wonder if there was any part of you at that point that could possibly imagine that this could even be a remote reality for you. I wonder what your younger self would say to you now.
I'm sure my younger self would be appreciative of the bank balance had I not wanted to chase the dream. But no, I think everyone's got to have a dream, and to have a sniff and have a slight chance of being able to live it, it's what keeps you going every day.
Do you ever think about what you are missing out on then because of the dream that you are choosing to pursue?
Yeah, I think that's part and parcel of it. I think as soon as you accept that you're going racing and it is an expensive sport, hobby, yeah, that's what it is, I guess. I mean, if it ever got too much, I guess you'd give up, which is sort of why I did have a brief spell off. I simply couldn't afford it. Like lots of people, work to live, not live to work, and we do our very best to make sure we can go racing.
What were you like when you weren't going out there? Was there a definite point where you thought, this is not who I want to be, and it wasn't giving you any joy at all, presumably?
Yeah, it was probably unbearable to live with, to be honest. I'm not sort of one of these people that can sit still for very long. I like to always be doing something productive. Yeah, I was messing around on off-road bikes and bits and bobs, but nothing that particularly scratched the itch, as well as watching the lights go out.
You're listening to the Startline podcast, and today we are with George Anderson. Can you give us a sense then of what it is that you get out of doing this, and certainly would get out of the thought of doing the Manx Grand Prix? Because, let's be honest, it's not for everybody, is it? You have to have a certain mentality, and I'm just constantly amazed at how the brain of a racer who wants to do this works.
Yeah, I don't think most people, it would appeal to most people, but the people it does appeal to, which is quite a lot. Yeah, I think as long as you're focused on it, you could get there. Should your entry be accepted, obviously, that's another huge factor. But like I said, I think we've got a plan in place. Should our entry not be accepted this time round, we can carry on, get some more races under our belt, and have another go, perhaps 2027.
And you mentioned you've got the support of some of the local businesses. How did you find going out and asking for that? Presumably friends were sort of easier to approach, but it's not an easy conversation to have, I guess.
It's not for me. That's one of the worst parts, to be honest. But fortunately for me, quite a few of my close friends are huge bike enthusiasts, TT, Isle of Man enthusiasts. So that made that conversation a little bit easier. Got a bit of support from my local pub. So that was a relatively easy conversation, and to talk to some of my friends in that pub and have the same conversation makes it a little bit easier. But no, it's definitely one of the worst parts, trying to sell yourself on a plate when there's always someone bigger, there's always someone better. But no, lucky in that sense, we've got a good little following around us, and that does make it easier for sure.
And have you got a team sorted that you'd bring with you?
Yeah, so I'd like to think after ploughing a few 1,000 hours into Mike's bike, he'd come with me, but he's already sort of said that that's something that he'd be happy to do. And there's another local chap who comes and gives me a bit of a hand on the short circuits, Chris. He's got quite a lot of experience on the roads, and Manx Grand Prix and TT especially. Ran there with another local lad quite a few years ago, so he's sort of knows how it all works.
Yeah, and there'll be a few pints down the pub that you owe them, I guess, once it's all done. And just in terms of your mindset, I know you've been over quite a few times, haven't you? You talked about doing some of the laps around the course because that's so important, even on open roads, just getting that idea of where you're actually going. How physically prepared do you feel at this point?
At this point, I've always said to myself, if I didn't feel like I was ready, then I wouldn't bother submitting an entry, no matter how much I sort of wanted it. I've always said that I would like to feel prepared in myself. And the thing is, I enjoy learning, so it made it a little bit of an easier process. I'm not saying that it's easy by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't really think anything of waking up and watching a few onboards and spending the time and money to come over to the Isle of Man, get as many laps in the van as I possibly can. And it makes it easier when you enjoy the learning side of it, I think. And I listen to all the podcasts and like this one with yourself and all the others that are out there, and every sort of nugget of information I can gain is a good day in my book. So the learning is not so bad.
Do you know, I'm amazed at even having spoken to a few people on this podcast so far at how many people are over here at any one time doing laps around the mountain. I wonder if you all know that you're there doing exactly the same sort of thing. And that's really important, isn't it? That connection with other people who really understand you, who get exactly why you're doing what you do, understand the sacrifices that you've made. Have you got those friendships to fall back on?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it was a large group of my friends, various different circles. They all contain Isle of Man enthusiasts, whether that's the crowd that I see in the pub or the crowd I see in the week, the crowd I work with. There's someone that's like minded. So it's always a good conversation when everyone wants to talk about football.
And we are towards the end of October now. You've put your expression of interest in, so it's a bit of a waiting game. How do you find that side of things and sort of getting to grips with regulations and all of that? Because it's not just as easy as it is just bringing your bike over and jumping on the start line. And I think that's just what's incredible about this, sort of learning what goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's a waiting game for everyone now, I guess. And the bike I'd like to bring is that the next gen super sport rules now for what's been a standard 600 super sport machine. They're ever changing, and I know some of the TT stuff is filtering down now through to the Manx Grand Prix. So that's takes a bit doing, keeping on top of that side of things to make sure the machine's compliant before you think about anything else. So yeah, but I'm sure we'll get there.
And the other side of things in this sport now is they're having to be out there on social media, almost selling yourself, and also certain degree that you've got responsibility to your sponsors to sort of give them a mention. Is that a side of things that you're okay with?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I know I'm a personal social media and stuff. I don't really post all that much, so I do find that bit a little bit difficult. But it's a lot easier when you've had a good weekend's racing to tell everyone about it than it is when you've had a bad one.
And when was your last race?
So the last race was the start of this month. That was Mallory Park. Yeah, a few good results throughout the day, and wrapped up second in the 600 championship there, so which is always nice. And I think it's always important to take something good, whether it be a personal best lap time or a good result, into the winter year, because it's a long time now until the next time you can get back out.
And that's the thing, isn't it? I was just going to come on to that because you talked about what you were like when you weren't going out there racing, when you made that decision to take that little break. And I just wonder if winter is a time that we need to avoid you a little bit.
Yeah, you'll find me in the Isle of Man, sleeping in the back of my van somewhere and doing loads of laps. Other than that, I'll be in the workshop and getting the bike as best it possibly can be ready for next year.
So where can people follow you on social media then, George?
So my personal Facebook, George Anson Racing, and George Anson 63 on Instagram.
Okay, so we'll put those links on the podcast page and encourage everyone just to follow you and see how you're doing. And then in terms of, there's not really anything I guess you can do, is there, until you get that decision back? And then it's either going to be, okay, you're going to hang fire for another year, or it's going to be all systems go. And I guess preparing for both of those things is a little bit of an unknown.
Yeah, I'd definitely keep up to date and up together with the regulation side for the bike. Should that change drastically and mean all of these electronic add-ons and whatnot, I would still probably look to do that so that I can spend as much time as possible on the bike as it would be if my entry would be accepted, if that makes sense. So I'd like to be comfortable I feel like I'm comfortable on the bike now, but if the bike's got to have X amount of upgrades doing various different things, then I'd like to also be comfortable on the bike in that trim.
And what are you like before a race? How do you handle the nerves?
Not too bad. I don't really. Some people that come with me would say I'm a little bit miserable, but I can assure you when the visor goes down, I smile. But up until that point, it's yeah, no, I wouldn't say nervous, probably apprehensive, ready to, once the first corner's out of the way, first sort of laps, you can settle into it. But yeah, no, not too nervous, not such a nervous person.
And anything you do then to get race ready? Are you a music fan? Is there a particular song of choice that you'd listen to?
There actually isn't, though. Again, that's something a few of my friends find quite weird. I don't really generally listen to anything unless it's podcasts or onboards, really. I tend to drive to all the race meetings, no matter how far away they are, in complete silence. They find that quite odd, but I find it a good time to do some thinking.
And I guess actually when you're thinking about having all that time to yourself, if you're going around 37 3/4 miles, people have described it as being quite meditative, and actually they can take an awful lot of things in. And it sounds like you've got exactly the right mindset for that.
Yeah, I think you've, at those sort of speeds, taken as much as you can, but I think as long as you know what corner's coming up and where the course goes next, it should be right.
And you mentioned onboard. So just finally, who is your onboard video of choice?
Well, I've got a few actually. I sort of alternate through. So this morning was Cam Donald's on a 600. He sort of commentates on that, quite like the Johnny Barton one in 2011 that Milky commentates on. And if I'm really looking to scare myself, I'll watch the famous John McGuinness one from 2015. Anything on the first 10 pages of YouTube, really. I've seen most of them.
I think I'd scare myself watching somebody go around at 30 miles an hour the whole way. But anyway, George, thank you so much. It was great to talk to you, and we will catch up with you hopefully once you've got that decision and see how things are going.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
George Anderson, as I say, just talking about that significance of first impressions in shaping aspirations. We have every single thing crossed for George. Just after we finished recording, though, he wanted to mention the sponsors that are supporting him.
So I've mentioned a few of the companies that generously supported us throughout 2025 and hopefully can continue those partnerships into 2026, and fingers crossed so they can see their company name line up on the Glen Crutchley Road. And these companies are Avon Scaffolding, SC Construction, JE Technical, CS Windows, Doors, Conservatories, the Wheat Sheaf Inn, the Car Hotel, Scott's Plant and Haulage, Vale Tyre Centre, Pro Boots UK, Acorn Creative and Frey Daytona. It is very much appreciated, so thank you very much, guys.
And the links to George's social media are on the podcast page, so do give him a follow. Now, in the last episode of Startline, we met Adrian O'Connor, and as we were speaking, he was preparing to go and make a little bit of a trip to pick up the bike that he'll hopefully have on the start line for Classic TT.
So I think it was the third or fourth musical baby call this morning. I couldn't go back to sleep. So at 3:30, I left Bristol, headed to Banbury, and I'm now the proud owner of a 1992 yellow ZXR 400. Non-runner, came with some spare wheels. It was very reasonably priced. It's a gamble. We'll see what will happen. Get it on a dyno, see what it's putting out. After speaking to you yesterday or the day before, Beth, I have set a Facebook page up, and it's called Gracie Quinn Racing. GRACIEQUINN Racing. And it'll just be predominantly the Manx journey. And I got to thank one man who helped me massively the first 2 years of racing on the spanners, and that was Jerry Hatcher. I started off in his dad's motorbike shop, 30 years ago. But every time I'm stuck, he's bailed me out. He's been very good to me. And got carried away with the conversation yesterday. He should have got a thank you yesterday. But yeah, he's been good to me all the ways along. Drives me mental, but I think everybody does. But there you go. That's the journey continues.
Adrian O'Connor, the links again to his social media are on the podcast page, and he's got his marker ready for all those names that he wants on that bike. If you haven't listened to Adrian's episode, do go back and take a look at that. Thank you very much indeed for listening to this episode of Startline. Do take some time to find the riders on social media. Your support is very much appreciated. And if you'd like to get in touch with me and be part of the podcast in the future, you can email beth@startline.im. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.